Hey story lovies, welcome to Black My Story Time, where every tale beats with truth, drama, and power. Let's get into it. Episode 1, The Cruel Truth. The rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with soft jazz and the low murmur of conversation, wrapping the cafe in a warmth that should have been comforting for Julia. But today it wasn't. This place had always been her refuge, her quiet corner away from the world. But today, she couldn't soak in any of it. The laughter, the chatter, the clinking of cups. All of it felt distant, irritating even. Usually, she'd have taken her favorite nook in the back, the one everyone knew was hers. Whoever dared sit there when she arrived would quietly move. The staff made sure of that. After all, Julia Cooper wasn't just another customer. She was the wife of the man who ran the town, and she totally took advantage of that. No one wanted to end up on his bad side. Today was different, however. Today wasn't about comfort. It was about control, and she was losing it. When the waiter hurried over to greet her, Julia waved him off without a word. She moved through the cafe with quiet purpose and settled into a seat by the large floor-to-ceiling window, the one that offered a perfect view of the busy street. Outside, people passed by, chatting, laughing, rushing somewhere important, completely oblivious to the turmoil ripping through her chest. Why would they care? Julia knew exactly how she'd gotten here. She'd built her own little empire of fear and privilege, brick by brick, and now she could feel it all slipping away. Her gaze stayed fixed across the street, on the boutique, another one of her escapes. She loved walking in there, hearing the doors lock behind her, while the staff fluttered around, catering to her every whim. No one else was allowed inside until she was done. She reveled in that power, the whispers, the envy, the silent detest from the townspeople. It used to feed her. Now, it was all being threatened. Her reflection in the glass looked calm, poised, almost unbothered. The sleek, tailored clothes she wore did their job well, broadcasting sophistication, elegance, opulence, a woman fully in control. But her eyes told a different story. They burned with something raw. Anger, determination, maybe both. Whatever it was growing stronger with every passing second. A cup of coffee slid onto the table in front of her, pulling Julia out of her thoughts. She blinked, looked up, and saw Alice. Alice was the only one at the cafe brave enough to handle Julia's moods. She brushed off the threats, met the insults with her usual calm, and responded in subtle, cutting ways that Julia both hated and respected. Theirs wasn't friendship. It was convenience. Alice had her finger on the town's pulse, and Julia needed the kind of information only Alice could provide. Julia wrapped her hands around the cup and took a quick sip of the latte. It was perfect. The temperature, the flavor, yet it brought her no comfort. She pulled the cup close, holding it to her chest, as if it could somehow steady her heartbeat. Her eyes drifted back across the street. A woman stood sipping champagne while the staff fussed over her every whim. The full-length storefront window reflected Julia's pain back at her, like a scene straight out of a bad movie. The woman moved through the store with effortless grace, confident, radiant, as if she owned the place. Julia had to admit she was stunning, drop-dead gorgeous, young, maybe 20, 25 at most. Her caramel skin glowed under the soft boutique lights, the curve of her waist, the perfect posture, the easy laughter that seemed to follow her everywhere. It was everything Marcus liked, and she saw why Julia's jaw tightened. For the first time in a long while, she felt something dangerous stirring inside her. Envy. The whispers had already started, that this woman didn't care about Julia's threats. She wasn't afraid. She was bold enough to be seen, bold enough to exist in her space, in her town of Lonbridge. Julia had been trying to get rid of her for the past month, but she was still here. That could only mean one thing. She was permitted to be. She was untouchable now. An order from up high. And that realization hit Julia like a chill. For the first time, she felt herself slipping, losing control of the narrative, of the power she wielded. After 20 years as the queen of this town, her reign was being challenged. Julia's chest tightened. "That's my place," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Why would he send her to my place, to shop in my favorite store? A long sigh escaped her lips as she blinked hard, willing the tears not to fall. But they gathered anyway, shimmering at the corners of her eyes. Alice sat down quietly, following Julia's gaze without saying a word. Julia's brow furrowed as she shot her a glance. The look on her face communicated her disdain for Alice, who didn't seem to know her place. A dozen sharp remarks rose to her lips, the kind that usually sent people scurrying. But she bit them back. She needed Alice today, so she reverted her gaze back to the boutique. She gripped her cup tighter, her eyes never leaving the boutique across the street. "She's a regular there these days," Alice said smugly, stealing a quick glance at Julia. "Sometimes she stops in for coffee with her friends. Then later he picks her up." This wasn't the first time Alice had mentioned it, and the quiet gossip around town confirmed it. What unsettled Julia most was the timing. The woman was around far too often, and for far longer than the others had ever been. It brought her back to a time she didn't want to remember, 20 years ago, to her own rocky introduction into Marcus's life. She had been that woman once, the one everyone whispered about. She could see the parallels. The outsider who didn't belong. The one who had known about his wife, about the life they'd built together. The woman who had stayed with him through the hard years, helping turn Lonbridge into the thriving, self-sustained town it had become. Julia hadn't cared about any of that back then. She only wanted the life, her life, and Marcus had promised it to her. Now, watching the new woman across the street, Julia felt the irony burn in her throat. "She's me," she thought bitterly. "She's here to take over my life, just like I did 20 years ago." The light in Julia's eyes dimmed. Alice saw it, but she felt nothing. This was the same woman who had terrorized the cafe staff for years. Workers used to argue over who'd have to serve her, trembling as they placed a cup on her table, praying she wouldn't find fault with it. One wrong order and Julia would hurl insults, threaten to have them fired. Whenever she walked in, the entire cafe would fall silent, tension thick in the air. And only when she left would the room finally exhale. And it wasn't just the coffee shop. She carried that cruelty everywhere she went, feeding on people's fear. So no, Alice felt nothing. No sympathy, no remorse. If anything, she was fighting to keep her expression neutral, to hide the quiet satisfaction, the deep-rooted disdain curling at the corners of her mouth. Julia Cooper, the woman who once made people tremble with a single look, now sat there, broken. Alice almost smiled. For years, Julia had thrown her weight around this town, riding on the power of being Marcus Cooper's wife. But in the past 3 months, since the woman's arrival, the town had been buzzing. The gossip mill never slept, and everyone saw this ending coming. They were patiently waiting. "I saw her trying on your Amari dress a few days ago," Alice added, her tone too casual to be innocent. She knew the value of that dress, one of a kind, ordered from one of the top designers in the Caribbean. Julia's head snapped toward her. No, wait. What? That dress is mine. It was ordered and specially made for me. Maria asked to keep it in the store as a showpiece until I was ready for it. Her voice rose slightly, the edge cutting through the quiet hum of the cafe. She could feel eyes turning toward her, but she couldn't stop. Her pulse was pounding. Anger boiling over Alice glanced around, offering an awkward smile of apology to the onlookers. "Mrs. Cooper, please, calm down," she whispered, urgency etched in her tone. Before she could finish, Julia snapped. "Don't you tell me to calm down. Don't think I don't know you're enjoying this. You don't give a damn, so stop pretending." She could feel the walls closing in, the loneliness pressing down, almost 20 years of arrogance, of enemies made, bridges burned. Now, there was no one left to care. She caught herself then, drew in a deep breath, forcing the tremor from her hands, pulling her mask of composure back into place. The thought of her, that woman, trying on her dress, sent a heat through her chest that bordered on fury. That dress wasn't just fabric. It was a symbol, a reminder of her place in this town, of her influence, her taste, her power. And now, even that was being touched, violated, by someone who didn't belong. Julia gripped her cup even tighter as she stared through the window at the boutique. She didn't know how much more she could take. Thank you for joining me, my story lovies. Remember, every voice matters, and every story has power. If you love good drama and Caribbean stories, don't just watch. Join the family. Hit subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and stay tuned for the next intriguing story.